The nation of Israel is now a nation of slaves in Egypt. Paro, recognizing that their numbers, that their flourishing in his land could pose threat to him, enslaves the people and shuts them down from being the nation that they once were. These are a people that came from free thinkers, from Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, men that became who they were because of the freedom of their thought, because of the ability for their minds to entertain alternative realities and alternative truths than the ones that they found themselves in. Who more than Abraham Avinu, who grew up in Ur Kasdim, in an idol-worshipping society, with his own mind, his own thinking, his own creativity, discovered God. Abraham is the quintessential free man, and here, the nation, his offspring, his great-grandchildren, all of them enslaved at the hands of Paro. These are people whose lives are no longer theirs. They belong to the king. And it is Moshe that is sent to liberate them from those circumstances. One of the most encumbering aspects of human slavery is not the physical suffering or the backbreaking work that it might entail. It is the encumbering of the human mind that is its most pernicious attribute. We see this in the Parasha when Moshe comes to Paro and says, I want the people free. God has sent me to take my people out of Egypt. Send them towards the desert for 3 days. Paro's response to that is, they must have too much time on their hand. If Moses, you are coming to me to talk about freedom, if the people are even contemplating any questions of freedom, it means one thing. They are not busy enough. They should be so busy that they cannot think. And if they're thinking, they are not enslaved. And so I will make sure that their slavery is enhanced so that their free minds should be shackled by their work. I'm taking the straw away from their brick building. The straw will no longer be available to them in order to make the bricks. They are going to have to find the straw in order to make the bricks, to build the cities for which they are building, that they are building for Egypt. Paro recognizes very clearly that the seeds of freedom are not in the body, but in the mind. And that essentially is the legacy of the nation of Israel. We are thinkers. We are free thinkers. We are free thinkers like our great-grandfather and founder, Abraham Avinu. And what God was saying to Paro and sending Moshe to do was not just to liberate the people physically from the grip of Paro in Egypt, but to liberate their minds from the grip of Egypt. The people of Israel are people that think. We always have been. For the last 3,000 years, our people have been thinking, contemplating, and questioning. We have always entertained alternative realities. We have never taken for granted what is. We have always asked, what could be? It's for that reason that Jewish people will very often tend to answer questions with questions. As I like to say, the Jewish people much prefer questions that can't be answered to answers that can't be questioned. We do not die by unanswered questions. We die, we feel encumbered, we are held back when we cannot ask the questions. Fundamental to freedom is the mind. Fundamental to living free lives is the ability to think beyond simply what is in front of us. And when we read this and we remember that that is an essential core of what it means to be free, we must ask ourselves, to what degree am I thinking on my own? To what degree are my thoughts mine as opposed to the thinking of the collective around me? How much does social media, the news, the environment, the community affect how I think? What do we do in order to be able to ensure that my thoughts are indeed my thoughts? Freedom takes bravery. It takes courage. We have a tradition that over 80% of the nation of Israel stayed in Egypt and only 20% left. It takes courage to step into freedom. It takes courage to think freely. And the legacy of our people is always the encouragement to think freely.